Okay, folks, so when I recently did the booktubes tag snobometer, I it occurred to me that there might be one way in which I am contributing to the sorts of um, stuff on booktube that I don't want to add to, and that is pressure to read all this stuff, all these big fat pages. So here we're going to go through this. Did I really read all this? No, I did not. Let's check it out, shall we? So I pulled up the videos I've done since I started. Um, you probably won't remember this one because it was just a little short one. Um, I was trying to decide whether or not to read The War at the End of the World or Dragon Reborn. And the reason was because they're both big, thick books, which I rarely read. And I had just gotten through like 20 pages each, as just so happened. And so I compared them and decided to go with this one. And I have done no further reading in these since then. Those are the only fat books, I think, that I've read, with one exception. And then there's this one, the Wallace Stegner. I have begun it. Again, I couldn't really get into it. I'm probably not going to read it. I enter into books this big carefully. I will stop reading a book, but I do prefer to finish the books so that usually once I've decided to get into them, I do end up finishing them. Now this is a big fat book, but I have not read all of this book. It's a sort of fun flip through little book to read in, kind of like a reference book or coffee table book. And I want to show it to you because it's one of my two library books. Now I'm allowed to take out 2 library books a week, and I have 1 week to read them. So usually what I'll do is I'll take one to read, which on pace to finish this one probably in about 10 days. It's pretty easy and fast read, couple hundred pages, and that's really all I can read, you know, well, in a little more than a week. And I'm pretty typical reader, I think. So in this one, I'll give you a little video on it probably, but it's just I've just read the chapters about books. So I've just read in that book, and then so I usually return my books about 3, 4, 5 days late. So it's more like 10, 12 days than 7 days, and I'm happy to pay those fines and support the library. They don't seem to mind. So I'm not even reading that much a week. So that's about kind of what I read a week. All right, so the only big fat book that I've read that I discussed on this channel so far was the very first one, Shantaram. It just so happens I had just finished it when I started this. No connection there. And it was huge. But you know, I found that book in my hostel, in a book trade shelf. So I was reading that since I first arrived in Thailand. So at least a month, well over a month, it took me to read that big book. And that was the first one I discussed on this channel and the only one since. So that's been a while now that I've had this channel. Let's see what else then. Next we have BookTube Newbie, which of course is a tag. Correct the Things. The Things is not a long book, but it's also not one I've read recently. It's one of those books that I discussed that I read back in the day. The reason I was able to remember that one well enough, most I cannot, to discuss it with you is because I wrote my thesis on it. So yeah, so that's that one. So again, no big reading there. Next is Western Canon. That was another sort of tag. Next one was Iphigenia, which is a play. So one of the ways that you can read is you can read plays. Now plays, obviously they're dialogue, so they're usually short, and they're fast read and fun reads. And so yeah, I read that one and did a little discussion on it. That one's a play though, so nothing too long there. And then I have Last Unicorn. Now, Last Unicorn, I did read that book, but I can't remember if it is a YA book, but I would call it something like that. And it was a fast, very fast read, short little fantasy read. So I did read that one. Don't remember how long it took me. The next is The Weeping Daughter. That's just a poem, so you can see that's super short. Um, then we did Anthony and Cleopatra, another play. Um, that's a Shakespeare, so I was able to do it from more or less from memory, but I was reading essays about it in a book that I had of essays about it. So just, short essays. Then I did my haiku reviews. Well, those are obviously very short. And Why I'm Not Leaving BookTube is just a brief little meditation, no reading there. The Vatican Cellar I read. Now that one I don't have anymore, but it's a classic, so a little slower to read, but not at all thick. And then Chimananda's Grief. So now we're getting up to within the last month or so that I've done. You see how small that book is, right? So very, very small book there that I read. Um, then I did a short on independent people. I think that was a book that I read a long time ago, one of the Nobels, when I was reading the Nobels. So no reading there. Then a Desert Island tag, book recommendation tag, so those are tags again. Buried Giant by Ishiguro is a big book. It's a bit of a read, but it's he's a Nobel winner, but it's fantasy, so it's fun read. You can read it fairly fast. Again, that's one that I had read before. So then we have the Wheel of Time, End of the World starter tag that I did, or not tag, essay. I can't say call these essays. Video that I did. I'm sure video is old-fashioned. I'm showing my age, but I don't know what else to call these. Content. Many Voices is one of the scripted ones, so that again is I'm reading something that I wrote about, a book that I read back in the day. Then we have Duma. Now I did read this but it was because we were doing the group with Three Musketeers, the Read Around the World Classics group. So I did read a book for that. But it's fairly fast read. It's an adventure book. I read it on I want to say Gutenberg on the Gutenberg website. I just actually read that on screen, and so I make them big, so I can't tell you exactly how long it was, but it was not long. Okay, Dangerous Spoiler Phobia, another little sort of musings of mine. Free the Bears. Okay, now Free the Bears is a book that I finished recently, but started quite some time ago. I guess back in the day when I got that from the hostel. That was a fair-sized book. I don't know if you know, what's his name? Prayer for Owen Meany, World According to Garp. Irving's books are about a yay size. So I read sort of the whole first half, which was very fast read, and then it sort of totally changed direction. And then to finish that for the discussion, I read the back half, which took a bit longer. It was more like historical fiction. The first half was like an adventure, travel, picaresque. Okay, then I read Confidence Man by Melville. I did read that one. That was not a super long classic, and it's a Twain. And if you've read Twain, you know he's fun and pretty fast to read. Q was very short. The book was big. I remember I showed it, but it was an anthology, so it's more like a novella. Q that I did there. Pirate Ship. That's just a tag again. Women's History, just a tag again. In Evil Hour, that is a longer book. It's a Garcia Marquez. But I did, again, that one was a scripted one that I had reviewed back in the day. Topaz I did read, but that's a play. Again, a play, very fast read. Then The Gambler by Dostoevsky, I did read, and it is a Russian, but it's not one of those chunky, thick ones. Oh, I wish I still had it to show to you. It's a very manageable sized little book that I read on that one. Then the next is a nonfiction. I will admit to a certain advantage on these in that, in my academic training, I'm able to sort of read in these sorts of nonfiction books, take them apart fairly quickly. I have a bit of an advantage in that. Otherwise, though I'm a literature guy, I'm not an exceptionally fast reader of prose and novels and stuff. So I read in that Dan Ariely book, The Confessions of His Sins, there pretty quick. And then, because this is my second book in the library, so I had to return that one with, I think it was the Twain, or not the Twain, Twain. Then we got Short Shorts, Danger Zone. That's just a little short story, actually, that one is. Talk Swap is a short that I did again, no reading there. The Fall by Camus, again, is a scripted one that I had done before, back in the day. Anatomy of Farewell to Hemingway is looking at Hemingway books, particularly Farewell to Arms, which I had read back in the day. Then another chatty video. Pickle for the Knowing Ones. You can go on Gutenberg and look at this. You can read that in 5 minutes. It's a silly, ridiculous little book. All right, then we have a couple things about the earthquake. Candide, obviously I read way back in the day. Mistral, Gabriel Mistral, that one's just a poem. So poem, you see a lot of poems, a lot of plays, and some things that I've read back in the day. And then mainly shorter books that I've read in the last weeks. And then the 12 Books Apocalypse, another tag. Then that book, which I showed, I think, in the review, which is not big at all, Thai novel, The Judgment. So I did read that one. That was my main book for that week at the library. Gentleman's just another tag, bringing us up to Tagore, another poem. My last tag here is Snobometer, and another short video about the dangers of DNR reviews. So there you can see, I went through what seems like a ton of videos, but if you add it all up, you can see is not a ton of reading. And anybody who is reading a ton, well, God bless them. More power. But you should not feel pressured to be reading tons. You shouldn't be pressured to be reading any more than you are enjoying. And so I didn't want to go away with giving that impression that I'm like some of these booktubers who have these piles of books, because that's not what it's about. I'm very much about less is more, quantity over quality. Did I say that the right way around? Quality over quantity, and very much, taking one book at a time, really living with that book. Now I'm a, promiscuous reader. I'm always reading several books at a go, as you can see, or not reading at a go. But I've always got a bunch sort of on my theoretical bedside table. But yeah, I'm not trying to get through books. When I hear people talk about getting through things and things like that, it takes me back to grad school. I feel pressure. I feel so bad for y'all. Just enjoy what you are reading, and don't worry how much or other people seem to be reading. Choose things that you enjoy and take your time with them. All right, thank you. That's all I wanted to say about that.